So far, I've probably done about 60 radiant heat jobs in my career time. I think the oldest one is 42 years old and still running like a champ. Wore out 3 boilers. Yeah. Wore out 3 boilers. So I'd say it's doing all right. Being an old marine pipe fitter, I build all my own manifolds. A whole lot less expensive, and they do exactly what I want, and I get the right water flow without having to do a lot of rigmarole.
What's up, HVAC crew? Welcome back to another episode of HVAC R&D. Rhydon and Dennis. We also have a guest tonight. I can't believe this has actually happened. We finally pulled it off with a laptop from the Mayflower and a 10-foot kitchen table. So without further ado, let's get it going.
Yeah, come on.
Well, goodbye, Joe. Me gotta go, me on my own.
So what's up, HVAC crew? Like Dennis said, welcome back to another episode of HVAC and R&D. I was pleasantly surprised. We've got a fun show tonight that warms my heart a little bit. But before we get to the intro, don't forget to go check out the swag shop. Hopefully you took advantage of the Happy 19 discount code. But if you didn't, then now you need to take advantage of the Rhydon 36 discount code. 9% off and free shipping for my birthday, everybody. Go out and get some hats. There's a few left, but not very many. We need to order some more. And then also, please don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm getting ready to spam everybody's feed again because I have plenty more old episodes to still post. I got about the first 17 or 20 up there. There's more to go. And also, for any other info, you can always check our link tree in the bio of our Instagram. And I feel like I need to have some long, drawn-out intro for this. I just wasn't even prepared for it.
Well, it's off the hip, man. You gotta.
It is off the hip, man.
This is a big deal. I was gonna let you have this one.
This is so. This is a show I've wanted to do since we started this 2 years ago. We talk about him all the time. He probably doesn't know all the stories I've told, and I'm sure I'm going to get payback tonight.
He's pretty famous in Canada, too, by the way.
He's very famous in Canada. He doesn't know that.
Know it.
But there are a lot of Canadian people that want to know some Cajun Joe. And because of that, and I'm up here visiting my parents and sitting across my childhood dining room table with the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Cajun Joe, my father. Welcome to the show, sir.
I was born in the rain on a pocket train underneath the Louisiana moon. I don't mind the strain of a hurricane that come around every June. The high black water, a devil's daughter. She's hard, she's cold, and she's mean. But nobody taught her it takes a lot of water to wash away New Orleans.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, son. Now I get a little payback myself.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, yeah. He's got.
Of course, now you got to consider I started this child in the HVAC industry when he was 5 years old. So you learn to start picking up the trash on the job sites, and then little by little, you learn how to put in ductwork. By the time he was 11, he was a pretty good, well-trained duct installer, enough that the adult males that would be working with in the summertime on jobs, and my son would tell him, you know, that's not right. Dad's going to make you take it down. First thing they tell the kid, look, kid, you're too dang young to know what we're doing, and you don't know anything. And then in I walk and take a look at it and say, okay, take that down off the wall. It's all wrong. And they said, well, your son said the same thing. I said, why didn't you listen to him? And they said, well, why not? I said, well, consider the fact that he started in this business when he was 5, and he knows how to design ductwork. So how many years have you got experience doing this? Well, I've been doing it about a year. I said, well, maybe you ought to listen to the kid. He knows something.
There you go.
So,
yeah, we're going to have
over
to.
the years, he's gotten better. He's taught his dad a few things too.
I was going to say, I've got some questions myself that Rhydon's not prepared for.
That's good.
That
Let's hear it.
Jotted down. Well, first we got to we got to figure out what we're drinking here. Rhydon, we got to start with Cajun. What you drinking?
What you
Sweet
drinking?
tea.
There you go.
Now, he did enjoy a beverage at dinner. Very similar to this one, except it was the draft version. So Cajun Joe and I drank Hitchhikers at dinner tonight, and I'm drinking more Hitchhikers now.
Well, I had to break out the good stuff for tonight's show.
Oh, would
So
it
I
have
am
to be
drinking
have peaches in it?
No, it does. No, I didn't finish that one off. Cajun Joe is a peach brandy
pickled
maker
peaches
as well.
Yeah, nothing like
That
pickled
will,
peaches.
I don't need any more hair on my chest. I got to quit drinking that peach brandy. That stuff. Actually, my neighbor across the street, he loves it. It looks like a science project in my little mini fridge down here, though. Those peaches in there. No, I broke out some Willet bourbon tonight on the rocks.
Nice.
Just
That ought to help you sleep.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it's gonna be the only one I have the whole show. So,
Well, then
strong
just
enough
sip
for that.
slowly.
All right, so I got some questions here lined up for you. We're gonna have to get into. Well, first of all, you don't have to go in too much detail, but what have you gotten into just here lately, just work wise? Just catch up. What you been up to?
Well, we're putting in a lot of mini splits.
You're not letting Chris put them in, are you?
Oh yeah. Well, there are certain things that have to go on. I got to say a lot for Chris though. He came to work for me 8 years ago, and he had worked for 2 previous HVAC contractors. And what they would do is pile a whole bunch of stuff on a truck and say, "Here, go install it." He came to work for me, and I'm putting him on the first job with my installer, and I hand him a diagram or blueprint of how I want the duct system installed. And the first thing out of his mouth was, "What is that for?" I said, "It's real simple. If you put it in like I've designed it, it's all going to work, and we got a happy customer. If you do just what the hell you want to do, it's not going to work." Oh. So then later on, we got to talking more. And after the first year he was with me, we always have an evaluation. And I sat him down. I said, "Well, tell me about what you think you've learned." He said, "First of all," he says, "I was surprised when you had me a blueprint of how you want everything installed and telling me how much air is going to come out of each one of the holes." He said, "Most everybody else just piled the stuff on the truck and said, 'Go put it in.'" He said, and I didn't have the first inkling what I was doing. So now, after 8 years, he's out there on the job, and when he walks in and looks at something, I get a phone call. boss, you really need to come see this fiasco. So I get the chance to go out there
I
and
can
see.
hear him saying that.
So that's a good thing. So he's learned quite a good bit about airflow and duct design, because I think you can
He's
take
pretty
to
sharp with
anybody's
troubleshooting too.
Yeah, he's really getting good at that. So
Yeah, he's
the biggest thing is you can take the worst piece of equipment in the world and put a great duct system on it, and people love it, and take the best piece of equipment and put what most guys are doing now is putting crappy systems, and people hate the system, they hate the equipment, and they hate you. And,
duct work can kill your whole
that's the answer
your whole
to the
business,
biggest problem.
your name. That's right.
You know, we're looking at one right now where we just quoted. They got a 5-ton unit on it. It's supposed to be supplying a whole wing of a building, and it's able to push the air just about halfway. And the unit has given up the ghost. And another company came in and said, "Oh, we can put a 3-ton in here and it'll do just fine." And I'm saying, yeah, the 5-ton has been struggling just to get it as far as it's getting. 3 tons not going to work. But we'll see what happens when the people decide on what they're going to do.
So do you get called for second opinions, or do you come behind some stuff that's pretty new and they've just given up on the other contractor and you got to take it on?
Yeah, just about all the time.
Well, there can't be too many. How many companies are up there that you run across? 3 or 4, or is there more?
I'd say in our area, we probably got about 8
Okay.
that work in the area. And then there are some from out of the area that work in the area too.
Right.
We got
and
some.
I'm sure you've seen more and more coming over just because so many have been pushing to build business because he got so slow for a while. I know you're seeing more and more people you haven't seen before, I'm sure.
Well, a lot of it too is our area is kind of busting at the seam now that we have a railroad ride. There's a lot of tourists coming in, a lot of people want to stay. Housing is getting to be a problem. So everything in our county, 80% of our county is national park. So 20% of the county is only allowed to be lived in.
Okay.
So property in that is premium, and living space is real premium. But what I'm finding is that there are a lot of people who are building and they want to gut the system because they want to get it cheap. And
Right.
And I have a lot of refusals because when I design a system, I guarantee it's going to work. And oh man, you're just too high. I said, yeah, but think about it. What I put in is going to work, and I guarantee it's going to work. And if it doesn't, I will change it to your specifications at no cost to you. And sometimes I get a taker, and sometimes I don't. Some people, and then a couple of years later, I get a phone call to go check out the system, and they get mad at me when I tell them what's wrong with it, because what it's going to cost to fix it. And, that's to me detrimental. I just as soon walk away from them because I'm not the one that put it in.
Yeah, I used to work for a guy that would just couldn't say no. And that'll bite you hard in this industry. Just taking on anything and everything and doing it for whatever. You gotta, that don't work out in this industry.
No, you got to set standards somewhere. Otherwise, you just become overwhelmed and overworked and underpaid all the way around.
All right, so we got to get into your path that
My
you
past?
took.
We're going to dig up skeletons.
No, not your past. Your path to HVAC. Rhydon has given us a little bit. You can give us a little bit how you got into this.
How I got into that? Well, I was second in command of maintenance for a $73 million chlorine plant in Louisiana. And my job was, I had 55 people. and I took care of instrumentation, electrical, and refrigeration and AC maintenance. And also, I was the trainer for all of those things. So I got to train people
How
as
old
well.
were you during that? How old were you then?
I was late 20s, early 30s.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I had come from, my background goes into, in the military, I was a boiler tender, boiler repairman, and came out and worked in a shipyard as a ship's operator, then the ship's pipe fitter and premium pipe fitter, and then instrumentation and control technician, and later specialist in control systems for marine equipment. And left there and went to work at Shell Oil Company as an instrument electrician. They went on strike and I left. And I went to the electrochemical company where we made chlorine. And meantime, I was going to college at night for control systems engineering. So
Okay.
some people don't allow me into places where they got a lot of blinking lights because I kind of get mesmerized.
That sounds like me. Yeah, I'm just starting to push whatever button's closest. I'm pushing
that's
it.
something like what's going to happen next. And so over the years, I've had the opportunity to train people, and even here, after I moved here in instrument and control systems, as well as in HVAC, as the people working for me, because half of them had no idea what they were really doing. So basically, I had to teach them different things
Right.
in control system, teach them AC, everything. So those kind of things, having a background in the marine industry as well as in petrochemical and in electrochemical, kind of gives me a broad scope on all sorts of situations. Usually when I put in a
Yeah, I was going to
radiance,
say,
like a
well, a
radiance
basic
system.
heat pump system seems pretty bland to you, right?
Yeah.
It's got to.
So most of the time, I actually build a control panel for my radiance systems and make them as simple as possible and use parts that are readily available so that if something goes wrong, it's real simple to fix. All
that's
the
a good idea.
electronic controls and everything are great and wonderful, but the problem is you can't change individual components. You got to change the whole thing. Whereas to me, I like
Right.
to have individual components, and they cost less actually than the electronic digital equipment. And I can put
Right.
blinking lights on them as well, in which I do. So it doesn't take a major genius to make a simple control system for radiant heat. So you can probably on let's say you have a radiant system with 3 zones, might cost you $100 in parts to build a control panel with flashing lights. That's if you
Wow.
know what you're doing.
Right.
And you make it simple. Old Japanese term, keep it simple, stupid.
Keep. All right. So I got to ask, where'd you get the Boston accent?
Mainly it's not really Boston. It is more like
I know.
New Jersey and so forth. New Orleans, downtown New Orleans accent is, you sit on the curb and watch the birds in the park. And then, that's downtown Jersey. But
Right.
if you get out into the Bayou country, where a lot of my relatives are from, they speak a little different there. Hello there, Shah. How you was now? Como se va?
Oh.
So they
Right.
talk a little bit like that. They really murder the English language.
So what happened to Rhydon? Rhydon's got like none of that. I can't figure out what Rhydon's accent is.
He was not raised down there. He was raised here in the mountains. It's the wonder he doesn't have a Scottish accent. Because a lot of the Scotch Irish are from here.
Yeah, Rhydon's I can't figure his accent out.
Yeah. So, what's really a lot of fun. No, I'll tell you a good joke because it's really funny. You got two buddies that grew up and went to school together, and then one gal that went to school with them, her name Marie. You had Boudreaux and Gasson, and they both sparked Marie, but Boudreaux, he did the best, and he wound up married to Marie. Well, they stayed buddies and friends, and Friday nights they'd play cards together and everything else, and they were playing the game called Bourrée, which is a French card game. You got to be careful there. You can lose your payroll for the whole year if you're not careful. But, they were playing cards, and Boudreaux said, I'm going to get up and go in the kitchen and get some more pop with the foam on top and some more popcorn, And so he said, okay, So about that time, his old bourgeois, he's sitting over there dealing the cards. He kind of dropped some on the floor, and when he reached down to get him, he take a good shot of Marie's legs, Sit back up there and shuffling the cards. Marie Cher, you got some of the best looking legs there is. Yeah. She says, yeah, I know that. He says, sure, would like to pass a closer look at them. Yeah. So she said, well, you come by with $100 tomorrow afternoon, maybe that could happen, So, boy, the next day, boy, here he is, knock on the door, and there he is, got that $100 bill. Well, they went into the room, they passed a good time. About that time, Marie said, you better get out of here because Boudreaux will be coming home from the shop. It's going on 4 o'clock. So, man, he'd take off and get out of there. So, Boudreaux come home and she's washing dishes, looking out the back window and everything. And Boudreaux come in the back door behind her and say, hey, Marie, how you doing, babe? She said, doing fine, Boudreaux. He said, by the way, did my good buddy come by here today? She's thinking, well, his car was out front, so I can't lie. Yeah, he come by, passed by. We had some coffee together. She said, that sounds good. He said, by the way, did my good buddy happen to leave $100 bill here for me? And she's wondering how in the world he knew about that $100 bill. So she's thinking, no, he says, well, I haven't lied to him. I got to tell him the truth. So, yeah, that's a $100 bill. He said, hot dang, how can you beat a buddy like that? She said, how's that, Boudreaux? He said, hell, they come by the shop at 1 o'clock, bought $100, said he'd have it home before 4 o'clock for me.
Oh, my gosh.
That ought to get you going.
Oh, man.
My Lord. This is what I grew up with, people. You wonder why.
It's like literally Joe just like morphed into a different person.
Well, you got to look at life in different kind of ways. The Cajun people look at life as a fun game. It's time to have fun. There's some serious things you got to be involved with. You got to pay taxes to Uncle Sam and you're going to die. And the Cajun people, that's serious. Other than that, the hell with it. Let's have fun. So, and when you die, heck, they're going to give you a party anyway. They're going to sit you in a chair at the end of the street, and they're going to have a party for a whole week before they bury you. So, what the hell? You can say big send off. So that's the way the folks believe down there. Louisiana is a funny state. It has its own Mason-Dixon line. It runs from Bogalusa to Baton Rouge to all the way across to Rhydon, Louisiana. It's kind of goes through that way. And everything above that, is them stiff-necked Scotch Irish and Baptists. And then everything below that is the Cajun French people. They were kind of Catholic, and they snuck some Baptists in there, but we converted them. But, so they learned that, life can be a lot more fun if you just pay attention, and don't get too serious about a lot of things. Do what?
What's a stiff neck? Stiff neck.
A stiff neck?
Yeah.
That's a person that's got problems. But down in Louisiana, we don't have a stiff neck. Stiff neck, I think, is referred to those who have to have everything, and it's got to be perfect every time.
Oh, I got you.
Whereas the Cajuns' idea, hell, this is one time around. Let's have a party all the way, So, well, let's go out. And
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
So, I mean, they kind of believe in that. And so that's a good time. So don't take life too serious. Do your best to keep a smile on your face and scare the hell out of your buddy.
Yep. Again, that's what I grew up with.
All right. So I know what kind of system. Well, apparently the heat pump that was waking me up the last time I stayed there.
It is no longer.
Did you end up replacing that? Okay.
We have a new one.
All right. So that brings me to this. If you had no budget right now, what is your dream HVAC system to put in a house right now?
What is my dream HVAC system to put in a house? One that doesn't cost me any money.
No, he said if you have no budget. Or
no budget.
No budget
Okay,
at all.
no
You
budget.
can do whatever you want. Unlimited. Go
Unlimited.
to town. What do you do?
Yeah. If you were building a new house right now and you were going to put something in it, what would you put in it?
I'd put mini splits. The reason
You would
I
do
put-
mini splits everywhere.
My reason I put mini splits is every room would be zoned. And my home,
Yeah.
it has a zone system in it. And I've really never really used it because I just left. It was okay to
Is it
install when
zoned
I
for the
did
basement?
but no, everything is zoned. When I hooked it all up, I didn't like the way it was operating, and I just put one thermostat upstairs and left it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
And I've put in a lot of zone systems. At one time, I think for Zone X years ago, that I was second in North Carolina in installing those systems. And Rhydon was a little guy then. Yeah. But
Have you ever messed with the pneumatic zoning?
with which one?
Like pneumatic style
Yeah,
zoning?
Honeywell's on board ships and in industrial uses. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say I've come across them in commercial, industrial.
Yeah, most of the time, that's where you're going to find it. You go aboard marine vessels, and some of the older ones, with the ones I worked on, Honeywell was a big thing with pneumatics. When they were all set up and working right, they were perfect. They were very good. And in the marine industry, you're going to use steam coils and hot water or cold water coils for your heating and cooling. One of the things
Okay.
I was amazed at when I worked at Shell Oil Company was their maintenance building. You could boom up a 125-foot boom inside of the maintenance building. And
Jeez.
it covered two big city blocks. And they actually air conditioned it with steam and water. And what they used was an eductor system. Now, I don't know if you know what an eductor is. If you remember in high school, one of the experiments in science is you had a Coke bottle with water and a straw, and you blew air across the top of the straw, and it sucked the water up.
Right?
That's
Yep.
the eductor principle. So if you take high-pressure steam and build a jet to where you can have water in a sealed container and pull a vacuum on that water, the water will boil at a very low temperature, which in turn removes the heat and your water is chilled. So then you have chilled water that you can air condition with. They also use that.
So what? I mean, what kind of temp would they keep it in?
The shop in the middle of the
76 or
summertime.
8 or
Now you consider the size of this shop and the size of the blowers because you could drive a pickup truck in it.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're talking we're talking air conditioning on a scale that's most people never see, and
Or
Right.
think about.
Or yeah.
so you look at how big the coils were in that, and they kept that shop 20 degrees cooler than what the outdoor temperature was. It was 100 degrees outside. It was 80 in the shop, so it felt cool. So
Oh yeah, but
they actually dropped it 20 degrees. And in the wintertime, they used the steam through the coils to heat the place. So it was always comfortable.
right. What's your thoughts on geothermal? You feel like it's trying to make a comeback?
I got
I keep
certified on
hearing it.
geothermal way back in the early 90s. And
Right.
geothermal is really good. The thing about it is it's so expensive.
Yeah, I've been seeing there's some crazy rebates on it. Like, I think up north they're giving like $1,500 a ton.
We used to have some really big rebates up here, which I think is what caused us to do some of the like ground loop ones that we did before. I know we did that one where close to the library.
But is the cost now back to normal, or is it still high? You know, I mean,
well,
even with the rebate.
Sometimes it depends on where you have to put the system. I went up, I guess, about 15 years ago was one of the last inquiries I had for geothermal, and it was up on the side of a mountain over in Haywood County.
I remember that one.
The only place that I could put a
big vertical
heat exchanger
right?
or a
Straight
transfer
down.
was in the driveway, and I had to dig 300-foot wells, put the coil in and then seal it. And by the time we were finished with what we were doing to put it in there, we were looking at about $26,000 to do a geothermal for the man's house, who happened to be in his late 50s. And he looked at me, he says, "I'll never get the full benefit of this system, will I?" I said, "No, sir, you won't. You'll die before you get your payback." I said, "That's the way it works." I said, "Unless you can get somebody to subsidize it and pay for half of it or more, and you pay for the whole shooting match, you'll never benefit from it." So geothermal is good, and it is very efficient. I've done several of them over the years. I've had some that use spring water because they had a tremendous spring coming out the ground, and they just pumped the water from the spring right through it and right out the other side back into a creek. And then I think the first one I put in was in Macon County. The man had a well that produced 150 gallons in 10 minutes of water flow. And we just needed like 9 gallons a minute to put through the system to operate it, and didn't have to put it back in the well because he had so much water. And then I did another one over there that we were having to put the water back in the well, so we had to use temperature controls to keep from overheating the well with the return water in the summertime. And then in the wintertime, we ran into that same temperature differential with cold water.
I just felt like the SEER ratings were getting to the point, cost versus the SEER ratings you're getting now and the cost to put that system in versus geothermal and the cost to put that in. I mean, if the rebates are out there,
hardly.
Yeah, I mean, if the rebates are out there, I guess.
Well, the thing about it is, if you look at the high efficiency equipment versus the high efficiency equipment of geothermal, if the installer has really done a good job of designing his ductwork, you can really be real close.
Right.
And troubleshooting and repairs are a lot easier on a regular split system than on a geothermal, because if you wind up with a water leak, oh hell, it could be anywhere.
Well, and I've only quoted maybe 4 or 5 systems that were geos since I went to wholesale. I've sold 3 or 4 and half of them ended up being a pain in the rear end, or I ended up having to go back and try to figure out how to support someone we had sold one to in the past with a sales guy that didn't know what he was selling to a contractor that he had no business giving it to. I know there was
there's usually only a couple in each town, right? That are
there was a guy that put one in a brand new dairy down on the North South Carolina line, maybe 2 hours outside of Charlotte, in the middle of nowhere. And they put the ground loops under the parking lot.
Sounds like a good place for
So
it.
on top of that, they weren't buried deep enough. They were too close to the parking lot. Where they paved it, it was just sucking heat down onto it. And the system was already way undersized for what it was going to be used for anyway, and it never worked. Ever.
That's why they have schools for that.
Yep.
Because if you can't design your correct water flow on your heat exchangers, it's never going to work right. And,
no, there's a lot going on there. You can.
The thing about it is, the biggest thing about here where we are in Western North Carolina, from 4 feet down to 300 feet, it's 55 degrees Fahrenheit. It's not going to change. It's always going to be there. The Earth heats about 300 feet of the Earth's surface. I mean, the sun heats about 300 feet of the Earth's surface with standard radiation from the sun. After that, then you're dealing with the core of the Earth. But a lot of people don't take the time to study what they're doing. They just read a book and say, oh, yeah, I got this. And they haven't got an idea of the technical side of it and installing it. I've got a good friend who did a lot of that out of Asheville and was very successful with the geothermal systems, but only because he was a good engineer. And the systems he put in were very viable and really worked and were not hard to troubleshoot. But
I think Asheville is a pocket of geothermal.
Yeah.
From what I'm hearing.
There's a couple of pockets of a lot of money in Asheville, and those people have the ability to afford that kind of system too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's if the rebate's there, if it makes sense of a young homeowner or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say a young homeowner building a house for the first time would go to geothermal or to Rhydon or the combination of the two. Could really put in a very good system that would be good for many years to come. I have a good friend that's a builder who's retired recently and just become a house inspector. But I enjoyed working with him when he was building a house because I could always count on a house that was square. Everything was where it was supposed to be. And when we put the system in, he worked with us to make sure that we got the thing balanced where it would work right. And I convinced him when he built his new home to put radiant heat in his basement. And after his first winter in his new home, he called me up. He said, man, am I glad you convinced me to do that. I said, how's that? He said, my heating bill is way down. He said, that concrete, once it's warm, he said, it's radiating up all the way to the second floor in my home. He said, my heat pumps that you put in don't work very hard at all.
Now,
so
speaking of radiant, I had a short conversation with another one of our Canadian friends day before yesterday, and he was putting down a radiant floor system, and I'm watching all these new floor systems where they just snap the pipe in place and just roll it down all perfect, and all I remember is, I had to lay down a wire and zip tie it perfectly to
well
whenever we did radiant systems. I think
Mm-hmm.
the very last time we did a radiant job in Sapphire, it was the other engineer's house, the engineer that was from England. I think that was the first time we used
The snap in.
the snap
place,
floor. But before that, it was always
That's why.
zip tying it to wire mesh,
Yeah. Well, guess what's in
That's
my
why
new
Joe
workshop?
said it was.
radiant floor.
Yeah, but
Oh,
it's
really?
hooked to the concrete grid
Yeah.
with zip ties.
Hey, you
But,
know,
I was gonna say that's why
still
Joe
works.
said it wasn't labor intensive
the thing about it
because
is,
Rhydon was doing
back
it.
when we were doing a lot of this originally with the concrete, was before they put the fiber in the concrete. So you had to have
Okay.
the reinforcement mesh in your concrete. You still put down the 2-inch board, but then you had the concrete mesh, and you would attach your tubing to the concrete mesh. And then you would pray that whoever the concrete guy was, he wasn't using a pitchfork to move the grid around when he was doing it. They did that on my
Yeah, because
my
they got to
home.
pull the grid up.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
You got to
our
kind of
house
pluck it.
has a
both
radiant
ways.
floor that we've never been able to use.
Yeah, and that was because they were using these little pitchfork things to pull the grid up. What I didn't realize that they would have standoffs that you can put on the grid that holds the grid up at 2 inches, so that you don't have to do that. I've got a friend right now that's building a house at 4,300 feet altitude, and we're going to put in a radiant system in it, and he's using the standoffs. But he wants me to put the tubing directly on top of the insulation, and then he's going to use the standoffs on his grid because he wants to have a grid in his thing. So it'll still work and it'll still heat everything. He's planning on pouring about a 6-inch thick slab. So once we get that mass warm, it's going to stay warm a long time, and you just have to tweak it a little bit to keep it that way. And
So that's a pretty high altitude. Where's he at?
he's off of Silver Mine off of Nantahala. It's on top
okay.
of the mountain on Silver Mine.
So what else is going in the house besides that?
Basically, it's a strangely shaped house. It's going to be triangular in shape. So figuring out the square foot area was fun. And also figuring out how to put my grid in it was fun. But I've got it all figured out, and I've got it drawn out and laid out. So it's going to work quite well. We're using a 90 plus ream hot water heater to heat the water for the house, but also using it to go through a heat exchanger and heat the water for the floor. I don't like to get my water for the floor any hotter than 110 degrees. And you start getting up around 130 degrees, you're getting up close to an expansion point where your concrete could pop and crack.
Okay.
You don't want to do that. And the reason I say that is the first system I put in that's been in for 43 years and operating, as I was a member of the Builders Association in Nashville as a subcontractor. And the gentleman that owned Southern Concrete happened to be there, and I was trying to find out information about the concrete as to when or how stressing it and everything else, how temperature worked on it and all. And I got to talk to him, and he explained to me, he says, concrete is always wet, no matter how well you seal it off. Also, that you don't want to go above 130 degrees on that slab, because as soon as you do, you're going to pop it. It's going to crack. So he said, why don't you stay between 100 and 110 degrees on your slab? He said, that'll heat it the way you want it without a problem. I said, well, what about the moisture problem? He said, well, how tall would a concrete column, a foot square, buried 10 feet in the ground, before it quit drawing water up to the top of the column? My guess, 15, 20 feet? He said, close to a mile. Concrete will pull the water that far. He said, that's
Holy
pretty
cow.
simple. Yeah. And I mean, that came from a hydraulic engineer. Now, whether he was pulling my leg or not, I couldn't tell you, but I took the fact to that, But if you look at a concrete wall and check the moisture contact 10, 12, 20 feet up, you're going to find out it's wet. It's not going to be dry. So it's always going to have moisture in it.
All right. So what are the perks you've had having your son as your salesman?
It was a lot of fun. When he was a little
Well, it
guy.
ain't over yet.
When he was a little guy. Let's start off when he was a little guy.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
Time out. Okay.
Oh, yeah. That's going.
I heard that.
Right.
I hope so.
Anyway, when he was a little guy, what I'd do is I'd take him with me to meet the people, the homeowners, and I would leave him to entertain them while I went through and measured the house and drew a plan of the house before I'd go back and sit down and talk to him. So he got to learn to communicate, and which was good. And
Right, wrong,
I wish I'd have had a little Rhydon when I was selling or doing tech support. Here, you go in here and just talk to them.
Yeah. So, and you
won't
go
hover
do
over
your
you.
thing. And so anyway, as he grew up, he learned how to address people and so forth. But in so doing, he also learned that how important it was to get a feel for the people as to what made them comfortable. You have to, if you don't ask the customer what temperatures they're comfortable at or how they like things to work and so forth, how are you really going to design a good comfort system just just shooting it off the cuff? You can design a standard system and just put it in there. But if you understand how the people feel about temperature and temperature control, you can do an even better job.
Yeah, I think, homeowners know what they want. Sometimes they're terrible at explaining it. But, I learned over the years doing service calls that, you start out, you run in there, you get out of school, you run in there and you just ask them where the thermostat is and you just start doing your thing. You don't even want to talk to them, right? But then as you get older, you're like, I'd sit in there and have a 10-minute conversation with them. What has it been doing? What have you seen it do?
And the lady of the house probably knows more about it than the husband.
Yeah. One of the best job site visits I've ever had, I think I've told it on this show, where they've had, 4 or 5 techs go out. This poor homeowner's got a brand new 96% furnace, not keeping up. It's 35 degrees outside and it just will not heat the house. So I finally go out there as a tech rep, and the tech's like, you want to go into the house? And I said, well, no, I want to go in here and talk to the homeowner. He's like, oh man, you don't want to talk to that guy. I'm like, yeah, I want to see what he's got to say. He knows. I mean, he lives here,
That's right.
He knows what he's doing. So we go in there and he's like, I go to bed, I turn it down to 68 so I can sleep. I get up, I turn it to 72. And, this guy's in his 70s. He turns it to 72. Gas heat. Probably a 1,800 square foot home. And he said, at 10 o'clock, it's still not 72 in here. And I said, well, that ain't right. You should be roasting in here by then. Hell, in 30 minutes, you should be hot. And
especially with gas.
So I said, well, something ain't right. So that's the one where I opened up the crawl space door and the heat hit me in the face. And I looked at the tech and I said, man, it sure is hot under here. And he just said, yeah. I said, it sure is hot in this crawl space. He's just like, okay, what are you getting at? I'm like, there's a duct loose somewhere under here. It is not. It's 30 degrees outside. It's 72 in this crawl space.
Hell, I want to go work in that.
He's like, he goes, damn. He said, you know how many people have come out here? Of course, it was a low crawl. And I said, look, I'm not crawling all over there. Y'all put this in. I said, crawl around there, take you some screws. You got a duct that fell off somewhere. He gets back there and he goes, yep, here it is. It was a 12-inch supply that just fell off the plenum.
God.
You know, the old sticky collar. Nobody put a screw in it. You know, they stuck it there and left. And that poor guy's heat was just going.
They've done a good job of heating the world.
Boy, they checked everything on that system. Gas pressure, static pressure, you know, the drain, and damn
everything but the
duct
ductwork
just fell off. Yeah, I drove 2 hours for 10 minutes of crawling around in the crawl space.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a church years ago in Whittier, North Carolina, and took my Radiant camera with me. And when the system came on, you could see the streams of heat along with the bats coming out from underneath the church. And
critter story.
You know, the bats were in a good place. They were warm. But we had to cut a hole in the floor to make our own access to get underneath there. And during the daylight hours, and sent two of my techs down there to take a look at it. And they come back and said, boss, we ain't never seen that many eyes anywhere. Because they were looking with a flashlight. There must have been a million bats underneath this church. The guano was about 6 inches deep. And I said, well, they want us to fix this. I said, well, get us a whole lot of heavy plastic. No, we got religious bats here. So I got a hold of the powers to be at the church. I said, y'all have a job to do tonight. He said, what are you talking about? I said, after the bats leave home, you're going to go in there and you're going to block every one of those air vents off. What do you mean? I said, we're not going to be working with bats. So they came over to the church at night, and they see all these bats take off. There must have been one of the largest bat colonies in western North Carolina underneath that church. So they had a rude awakening at daylight when they were coming back to go to bed because they were going to bounce off of those pieces of metal we had them put in there. So,
they went to somebody's house.
Oh yeah, they went all over. Had to find something. But we put down heavy canvas and also plastic over the top of the guano so we could work. And we installed new gas systems for the church. And then I said, now you are going to have to put some screened louvered panels on all of these vents because your church has got to be able to vent, to allow the moisture and everything, keep it from rotting. So we put thermal vents in all of them, still kept the bats out. But it was really a lot of fun, especially when my guys come crawling back up and said, my God, boss, we never seen that many eyes in our life. So I got
that is the worst feeling in a crawl space.
I mean, you see that many eyes looking back at you, there's something going on.
Yeah, that's a terrible feeling. Just one set of eyes that you don't know what it is.
That's true.
You always look and see how far apart they are.
Yeah, that's that's another thing.
You see them about 6 inches apart. You're like, yeah, I'm out of here. I don't know what that is, but it's about my size. I'm out of here.
It's too big. In South Louisiana, you go in one and even the houses, see eyes that far apart, they're kind of greenish. You want to get out anyway because that's a long lizard.
Oh, yeah.
So,
what did you ever get into any? I know you fish, but did you ever?
Oh, you grew up in the
get
swamp.
into any gator? I know, but we see it on TV. The swamp people.
Oh yeah. Alligators
is that big business down there?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you a story about my grandmother. My grandmother was 4'8". Now her brother was kind of a big burly guy, and Grandma was kind of young at the time, and Granddad was working for the railroad, and they lived in a place called the Devil's Elbow. at the end of Calapissa Street in New Orleans. And it was like the way the tracks came, there was a big land area between the tracks, and it made like a big 90-degree turn. Then he called it the Devil's Elbow. And anybody that worked for the railroad got free housing to live in while they worked for the railroad. So her brother decided to bring her a 4-foot alligator and put it on her back porch, her screen porch. Just as a surprise for his little sister. So, of course, Grandma's cats, they went up onto the screen. They weren't coming down. They didn't want no part of that thing. But anyway, he went back over there later that day, and he went in, and the alligator was off the back porch, and he seen a little bit of blood. He went in the house, and his sister said, "Well, you want some fried alligator tail? I cooked that rascal up real quick. Thank you, brother, for bringing it over."
Holy cow.
So Grandma killed that alligator, skinned that sucker, and cut it up in pieces and cooked it. No, that's what you call
alligators.
It's like a good catfish if it's really done right.
So to me, I always thought it was in between chicken and fish. It kind of fell in the middle there.
Well, it depends on how
texture.
It's prepared. It just depends on how you cook it. That's all it is. The other thing is also how you cut it. Cutting meat a certain way makes a change in how meat can really be prepared and taste, if it's any good. If it's cut wrong, it's like chewing a piece of rubber.
Yeah, like a brisket.
Yeah,
you cut a brisket wrong, it's over.
Yeah, that's it. So, but if you cut it right, it's perfect. So, but
all right. So I wanted to get into the future of HVAC with you because I think you've got a good sight on it. Well, okay. Well, that answered 4 of my questions. If you were just getting out of school, would you start an HVAC business right now with all the stuff coming?
No.
Yeah, it's a lot coming on. Yeah, I mean, be honest.
Probably become an electrical contractor.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you obviously see yourself in the trades, but
I'm basically a mechanic of some kind or another. I could have been a plumber. Right. I could have been a heating guy. I could have been an electrician. I took the unlimited electrical exam back in the early 80s, and I was the first person to pass all the math in 10 years, but I missed 5 questions, and they wouldn't give me the license. I said, anybody can read the book. How many people passed the math? And, so if you answer the question, don't pass the math, you can get the license, and that's kind of crazy. I mean,
some of those tests tests are not.
That test was
they're not geared like they should be.
It was a square block of condominiums, all underground transformer service. I had to design all of the electrical wiring, all of the transformers, all of the services for all of the condos. I got all of that right. I answered the question with a residential question instead of a commercial question, and that's what they hit me on.
Yeah, I know North Carolina here, the license test is I got guys that are really, really, really sharp with everything HVAC and can't pass the test. Then you got guys that pass it, and this guy's calling me, can't figure out why he ain't got 24 volts on, at his thermostat or something. I mean, it's interesting who passes and who can't pass the test. It's just, I don't know.
I had that in the Navy.
North Carolina is one of the worst in the country, man. It really is.
Well, the 3 hardest ones to pass are California, New York, and North Carolina. Years ago,
yeah, I'm sure New York stuff.
Worked with some engineers on some projects for a university, and they said if it passed the code in North Carolina, it would pass anywhere in the world.
Yeah, I believe that.
I mean, that these guys were the engineers, I was just Joe Flunky.
Yeah, Rhydon can vouch for that. Some of his contractors have a tough time.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I get asked to help guys with loads way more than I ever imagined that I would as a TM.
Well, yeah, you go down one state and nobody cares if you got a load or not.
Yeah.
Running a load or getting electrician to connect your whip to the unit. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, in Georgia,
Which-
man, it's the Wild West.
I was going to
It's
say,
like-
how long did it take for them to introduce that, like, limited electrical for you to connect your own whip? Didn't they do that in, early 2000s here?
Somewhere in the late 90s, early 2000. But if you take the exam, you just want to take the limited electrical exam. It's basically the same exam. Having been in charge of electrical components and so forth for a major electrical using factory or plant, whatever you want to call it, and working with a lot of high-tech engineers who worked with NASA that came to work at our company. When I worked at that company, I walked around with a calculator in my pocket all the time because we were always constantly running into situations. When you have a plant that cranks up and uses 1/3 of the electrical power in the state of Louisiana, you're using electricity.
I was getting ready to say,
wow.
you need to tell Dennis how big Hooker was where you worked in Taft.
Hooker was a half a mile wide and a mile deep. Little plant.
Good Lord.
And we had
Little
four different
plant.
sections. We had 4 different sections. The old plant in the front was 600 tons of 98% pure chlorine in 24 hours, and about 800 tons of 50% caustic soda, and about 400 tons of 75% caustic soda. The next plant was trichloroethylene, perchloroethylene, solvents for electrical cleaning and so forth. Then we had bromine, bromides we produced. Then we had an area of about, it was a half a mile wide, and I'd say about 3 city blocks across. And you came to our chlorates plant, and chlorates is another chemical used in the paper and pulp industry. It's very dangerous, and people need to really respect it a great deal. And then they built the new 815 plant that I worked in when I was second in command of maintenance in that plant, and we made 815 liquid tons of chlorine, 98 to 99% pure chlorine in 24 hours, and 1,500 tons of 50% caustic soda. So
Now, is caustic soda a byproduct of creating chlorine? Is that how that happens?
all right, to produce chlorine, you really use a sweet salt brine. When you use it with sweet salt brine, you pass DC current through the brine. As the DC current goes through the brine, it releases 2 atoms. One's hydrogen, one's chlorine. Chlorine goes negative, hydrogen goes positive. Hydrogen we were burning off in torches on the plant until we put hydrogen burners in our boilers. I designed a control system for the hydrogen compressor that the company uses now worldwide on all of their hydrogen compressors. And what was really funny when we were building the plant, my boss and I were in a trailer with 3 secretaries. He's on one end, I'm on the other. And we wrote up all the spare parts for the whole plant. He took care of piping and machine parts and cranes and all that kind of stuff. I took care of electrical, refrigeration, and instrumentation, and wrote up all the spare parts for the plant there for that. And took us about 9 months before we started getting to where we could start testing the systems in the plant. The nice thing about it is, as we went through it, our engineers who designed the plant live in New York, which is kind of hill country, and we built this thing in a swamp, and they put the sewage lift station 14 feet into the ground in a swamp. Now, what's going to happen with that? It's going to fill up with water when you have a good rain. And
Right.
it so happened the startup night, we had a monsoon the night we decided to start the plant, and I guess within about 3 hours, everything went out on ground fault. And in the process, since I was electrical supervisor, my job was to find the problem naturally. And so
Yep.
I took my crew and we hit the main substation and tripped out all of we had like 16 13,800 volt breakers in that main subcontrol center. We had 4 substations in the plant. So what we did was we killed all of that, and we went to every one of those, opened every switch on everything. Since we had walkie-talkies, we could talk back and forth. So as we started putting power back into the system, we would start closing in breakers on pumps and different facilities of the plant. And then we got to the last substation, and we were on the last row of switches to kick in. And when the guy threw in the switch for the storage lift station, we were out. So we learned that, everything had gone to poop in the handbasket right there.
Literally.
So when I went out to the storage lift station, which had about a foot riser above the ground, and the water was a foot high, it was 2 feet deep at that point. So the storage lift station was full of water. And the next morning at daybreak, of course, the rain had quit and the swamps had started to drain the water off. We pumped it out, and I was amazed. We had Westinghouse explosion-proof containers to put where all of the motor controls were in. And when we unscrewed those and dropped them, the surge had actually eaten up the copper and the silver inside of it. So
And that fast?
That fast, one night. And
wow.
What we did was we redesigned it, put extensions on all of the pumps, put the pumps 3 feet above the ground. I'd redesigned the whole electrical system and put all of the main controls 3 feet above the ground, up so that everything was controlled at a point where we weren't going to get flooded out again. So sewage is a real bad thing to deal with.
Why he's not a plumber?
Yeah, we talk about that on the show. Yeah,
But
we got to have a plumber on the show.
you got to do something like that. But they're talking about a plumber. Now, we did a job here in BC, and a special one, because this place really gives free medical help to people in the community who can't afford. And the town sewage system backed up into the basement of this particular facility, and also into our duct system.
Oh, I'm out.
Yeah, so we had a lot of fun with that. We had to take it all out and put it all back in, and make sure we washed everything. Even when we put new pipe in, we washed the new pipe just to be sure. And then
it's just a special breed of
yeah.
I don't know.
So we put air purifiers in the system, UV purifiers in the system, to assist to make sure that we killed all the bacteria if there was anything that we missed. So,
all right. So is there any changes coming in HVAC that you're actually excited about?
Yeah, I'm going to retire.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. I know I'm asking you these questions, and you got like the
Well,
end of this.
I'd say
but
because
you're here, you're there.
what I'm looking at is, no, when I design a system along with some other contractors who really pay attention to designing systems, you design a system on your uh, point 0.1 on airflow and 0.05 on return, so that you really get your correct airflow. I mean, the factory has given you some really uh, clues as what they want, because on the discharge side, the duct is smaller, and on the return side, it's real big. So they kind of give you the idea they want
Right.
no pressure to deal with on the back end,
Yeah.
and they're going to jam it through on the upper end. And,
Yep.
they
Yeah, I
got-
mean, look at an air handler, right? Look how it's
that-
designed.
that-
You got that.
It tells you that. And now what I'm looking at, what they're talking about, this thing's going to be what design is going to be, what, 0.6?
0.6
Point-
is what ratings are going to be set on.
So
Total
that's
static.
pretty
Yeah,
high.
but total static.
Total static. But I mean,
Yeah, they're saying that's real world conditions, which
and then
In
North
retrofit
Carolina.
situations, we see terrible static all over everywhere. So
I mean,
trying to see
0.7
them,
is pretty standard.
yeah,
around here.
I hate to
mean,
say that, but it is. We see terrible duct systems all the time in Charlotte. And in North
and
Carolina in
that's the
general.
reason they're going to this, is because of the terrible duct systems, and the guys really not paying attention, doing due diligence to design things properly. This is throwing a monkey wrench in there. The guys that are doing
Well,
a
there
good
won't-
job. Now, what are we going to do with this thing? Is a 0.6. I'm still designing on 0.1. What's that going to do with the system? How's that going to? That's
Well,
going
they're forcing the brands to get 14 SEER or 14 SEER 0.2 out of a 0.6 duct system. In all these years, that SEER rating's been rated around a 0.2,
Yeah.
0.1, 0.2, somewhere in there. And they're forcing everybody. So essentially, this is just a fancy way of saying everybody's got to go up on their SEER. But yeah, I'm with you.
Now, talking about duct design, talk about when you went out west and were learning duct design. Remember
with
you
the
went,
smoke.
yes, factory training when you
Oh,
had to
no,
build
what
it.
I
Yeah.
did
Tell me
was-
about that. Yeah.
No, I didn't go out west. I went to Charlotte to a special school that the dean of engineering from Oklahoma State University and their head
That's why I thought
professor
he went
and the
out
head
west.
inspector from Oklahoma, they did a school. About 500 contractors attended that in Charlotte. It was 2 12-hour days. I had just gotten married at that time, and but I went to the class. My buddy, who was a carrier dealer over here, George here, who passed away this past year, lost a good friend. He and I were the only two contractors from over here in Western North Carolina that attended that class. And what was really nice, I think it was Dr. Bose. That was the gentleman that, like the Bose speaker, but he didn't do the Bose speaker, but he was Dr. Bose. And everybody had a piece of paper and pencil on their desk when they sat down. He said, draw me a duct system with duct sizes. Don't put your name on it. Just pass it up. They put it all in a basket. He had a complete plastic system of every kind of duct you want to imagine. And he could shine that up on a big screen and put smoke in it and show you what was happening to it. So we designed the duct system, turned it in, throw it all in the end. So he would just reach in the basket and he'd show a picture of what the guy, whoever it was, drew it. You might hear somebody behind you or ahead of you saying, that's mine, And so when he would
That's mine.
Yeah. So when he would put the system together and put smoke in it, you would actually see the smoke swirling around inside the system and not even coming out.
Oh, turbulent. Yeah.
The turbulence would be there, but no air was coming out of the vents, no matter how hard he was pushing it. And what little bit was coming out, and you'd hear somebody say, "Oh my God, no wonder my system don't work." And this went on. This was going on for 2 days, 12 hours a day. And George and I are looking at that saying, "Good thing we don't do that crap." So, but I mean, I walked away from there, and if I wouldn't have just gotten married, I would have moved to Oklahoma State and gone to school with that professor. I mean, I was that impressed.
Yeah, that
with what he
seems
did.
like something I'd like.
It was probably one of the best schools I attended, and it really enlightened me to want to do a lot better job. What I'd had was,
Well, at the end of the day, it's going to help you.
yeah,
For sure.
well, a good friend of mine, Luca Healy, was a heating and cooling engineer, and he worked for the folks that we used to buy York equipment from at the time. And he was my sales engineer. And I asked him one time before I attended that school, I said, "Lou, how should I design my system?" He said, "If you really want to just do down to brass tacks," he said, "design 400 CFM supply, 450 CFM on return." He said, "You'll be in the ballpark." And really, if you use that term, you will be close enough to be almost perfect.
Yeah. That's kind of where I was at. I mean,
You just stay with the 400 on your supply and 450 on return. You got enough air to feed your system.
I'll never forget when I did a little airflow class, and I had I'm trying to think of that furnace. It was a 96% variable speed.
Yeah, it's a 96V.
Yeah, I don't know. Was it a 3-ton drive? I think so.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we would, it was just a furnace. I'd plug it in, fire it up, and I had on the return side, I had it cut out of the side. I had it on casters.
Yeah.
And I just threw I threw the lid to my tote that I brought all my stuff in. I threw it over the filter, and you'd hear the furnace ramp up, because it's variable speed.
Yeah.
And it sees the static go up, so it ramps up. And I took a piece of paper and just laid it on top because I didn't have a plenum on it. And you could just lay a piece of paper on top, and it would just lay on the heat exchanger.
Yep.
And everybody would look like, why is there not any air coming out of that furnace? I hear it running. And I'm like, look, if it can't get in, it can't get out. And it's a really simple concept, but I swear it's just like you've seen all the light bulbs light up when I did that. It's and all I'm basically saying is, look, man, all these returns around this town are struggling. If you just could get a little more return on the system, it would go a long way.
No, it's terrible.
Most of the supplies are in the ballpark, right? But the returns, man, it's the returns. Every job I went to were shy.
Yeah. Well, one of the most famous ones I found a lot of here in these mountains is they like to use the 2x4 wall. They drill about 4 or 5 2-inch holes through the 2x4 and put a 20x25 filter grill on there and say, "You got a 25x25 filter return." And it's kind of crazy.
That don't work.
My tech and I went to a job that him and one of the contractors he worked for had installed. Lady was complaining that the system just wouldn't keep her house comfortable. And so I said, "Well, let's go." When he would pull up the files, he said, "Oh, I helped so-and-so install this." I said, "Okay, let's go find out." Well, we went in. I started looking. Well, got pretty good amount of positions as far as where the grills are for supply. Let's go look at the return. Well, I came in the hallway, and there was a doorway right past the grill. But I looked at the grill. But then when I looked around the door frame, there was a commode on the other side. So I opened up the the filter grill, and sure enough, there was 6 2-inch holes drilled through the 2x4, and that was supposed to be the return for a 3.5 ton unit.
Yeah, that worked out.
Oh, no.
So I explained to the lady, she had an open staircase there. I said, I can put your return underneath this staircase, and you will not believe how this thing will run.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, blow the curtains off the walls. But, you run into those situations, and that was something that used to be done in these mountains a lot. I mean, I'm talking all over when we'd go service, and I'd see 2 of these grills on the baseboard, and I'd go down in and look, and they got a great big duct there. But when I pull the grill off the wall, I mean, there wasn't enough square inch area to allow the air to return.
Now, I've seen that a lot in Georgia, where you go in the crawl and you'd see, they on a 2-ton system, they always, everybody loved to use the 14-inch flex, which is not enough, by the way. Just,
Yeah, if it's flex.
But anyway, they'd run that flex up to the floor. You'd see it go to the floor, but then when you went up in the house, you took the filter out and looked down in there. That thing was footballed, and it was like, 6 inches across and 20 inches long. I mean, it was, and you could just hear it whistling, just struggling. But a giant 20 by 20 filter or 20 by 25 on the wall, but you look down on the ground and you ain't got that.
And so now watch what's going to happen. I'm going to pull the cover off of this unit, and you tell me what happens to your airflow. And you pull the cover off, and wow, and then I said, okay, that's the problem.
Yeah, it's not
the best was going to trim out a new construction job, and they didn't cut the sheetrock out, and you have no return at all. You're thinking, golly, why does this thing sound like this? And you're just like, okay, well, there might be a return right here. You start get the sheetrock saw out. Nope, there it is. They just sheetrock right over the top of it.
Yeah.
Well, that
and
it was always, it up. They always laid the floor over it too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just ran floor right over it. Yeah,
yeah, we've had that on supplies. And then I'll tell you what I had. Back when I did a lot of work for Quala Housing years ago, I had done the computer center in one of the areas on the reservation, and they called me up, and I had already got all my grills in place and everything else because they had put plastic across the ceiling to keep a barrier between the insulation and what they were going to do. They said, we want you to get the duct system. I put all the duct system in all the grills, because they had the computers in there. Well, they sent their crew in there in the evening, and the crew put sheetrock up. Well, 2 days later, I'm getting a phone call, and somebody's trying to bite my head off because the system doesn't work worth a damn. I get over there, and I start looking at the sheetrock, and I said, where's my grill? Well, you could see this bulge in the sheetrock. So I went in every room, and there was a bulge in the sheetrock where my grills were. So I went and got the foreman, and I said, take a walk with me. He said, well, what's going on? I said, I want to show you a little simple thing. You have been up my like Roto-Rooter. And I said, now, I deserve some respect here. I said, now take a look at the ceiling above your head. You notice a little bump there? He says, yeah. I said, that's my grill that's underneath your sheetrock. You might ought to go around these rooms and cut the sheetrock out and expose my grills, because your turkeys put the sheetrock right over all my grills.
Yep. Good old sheetrock, guys.
And so, it's amazing what goes on.
All right. Well, Joe, I don't want to keep you up too late. You got to get up at 6:20, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you said? 20 after 6?
Yep, 20 after 6, and we go to the office and go have fun.
I hadn't talked to Chris in a while. Is he good? How's he been?
He's doing pretty good. Since the guy just got married and everything else, he finally married the girl. She made him an honest guy now for a little while. We'll see how that works.
He's going to be the next one we got to get on this show.
Oh, I know, right?
Oh, God almighty. I'm not sure if you're ready for
Yeah.
that.
I don't either. I don't know if we
We're
are
not.
either. I don't know if we were ready for this one. I definitely think we're going to have a few more of these.
Oh, yeah.
I've learned stuff tonight that I haven't learned in the 36 years I've almost been alive. 2 days.
Oh, I knew I could talk to Joe forever.
Yeah.
Oh,
I miss Joe. I miss talking to Joe. Well,
There's a
you
lot
know,
of
he only
things
called
that
me when he
happen.
had a problem.
Yeah, well, it's really before Dennis, before you were the tech for our supplier, Hildebrand was the guy, and several times he put me on the spot. Somebody called up and said they were having problems with the equipment, and he said, "Do you know anybody that knows anything about this stuff?" He said, "Well, I'm going to tell you one guy you need to call and get him." He said, "That's one guy very seldom, if ever, calls me. And if he calls me, he's got a real problem." He said, he said, he solves most all of his problems. He says, call him and get him to go. And several times I've had to drive way over to Lake Lure or somewhere on the other side of Black Mountain to go troubleshoot a system for somebody and to tell them what was wrong. And
I remember the first site visit we had, me and you, and it was that it had the low voltage wire was, I think it was too long, right? You didn't know how long it was running from the stat to the unit.
no,
We were guessing hundreds of feet, and it was dropping voltage,
yeah.
and we just twisted them together. I guess it's still working.
Yeah.
I hadn't
Well,
heard from you.
sometimes people don't realize that wire has a resistance, and I've been amazed that people run 1,000 feet of number 12 wire and expect it to run on 120 volts when they crank it up, not realizing how much it's going to drop. It's going to drop 8 to 10 volts.
Yeah,
when they start it up, and then the
well, and low
equipment
voltage
trips
is
out.
no different.
Yeah. The old bingo center at Cherokee, a contractor from out east had put in, I was a York dealer at that time, put in these 20-ton York units, but they never would all stay online, and it was 10 of them. And they couldn't figure out what was going on. So he said, "Can you go over there and do that?" Well, sure, I can. Whatever. I'm a York dealer. You're a York dealer. You can save you the trip coming up here. You're going to pay me my fee. He said, "Oh, yeah, no problem." So I went in there. And I started cranking up the equipment. And I got 8 of them started. And when I started up the 9th one, 3 of them tripped on low voltage. And I said, wait a minute. So, okay, this is all 3-phase equipment, 230 volt, 3-phase. So I said, well, let me try something. So now when I started they had a whole bunch of air filters hanging from the ceiling as well. So I cranked up all the air filters along with the smoke eaters they had. I could only get 4 units to stay online. Anything else I put online, trip out on low voltage. So I went to the main power panel, put my clamp on amp meter on it, put my volt meter on there, and I started registering when we closed the circuit in. Well, heck, man, voltage was dropping out the bottom. Amps was shooting through the roof. I said, oh, this is good. So now I started checking the wire size. Went outside and I checked the transformer bank. They needed another 2 transformers to bring the voltage up to where they would have enough voltage to run everything in the plant. So I called the heating guy back and told him what I found. He says, how do you know that? I said, I worked in an electrochemical plant. I said, I know what it costs with low voltage. I said, everything you're losing is low voltage. It's not your fault. The electrician, whoever installed that equipment, didn't put enough service to handle the whole building.
Right.
So he went to the tribe, and the tribe got the original electrical contractor, who didn't like me after that.
I feel like when you say it like that, the guy goes down to like a TP to see the chief, right? Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, so he
goes and see the tribe.
Well, the worst part about it, his wife is is Cherokee and owned 51% of the company. So I made him look bad, and I'll just say HVAC contractor. So they upgraded the service and everything. I called the power company. I called Duke Energy, and had their engineer come out, and I showed him what was going on. And he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "Absolutely." So I said, "Pass the word." So I called up my guy. He paid me, and next thing I saw was that contractor was out there and had all kinds of trucks out there loading up, putting transformers in, running some new lines into the building and putting some new panels. So after that, everything
at least
worked fine.
I was going to say at least once a week. It was always in the summer for whatever reason, but somebody put in a 10-ton or a 7.5-ton brand new package unit.
Yep.
Goes to fire up and drops out and restarts. Starts a delay on the low voltage. And they'd call me and say, "Man, this thing's brand new." And I said, "What's your voltage?" They're like, "It's 208, 230. I'm like, "Well, which one is it?" And they're like, "Well, it's 230. I'm like, "Well, what's your voltage going to the unit?" They're like, 216. I'm like, "That ain't 230 volt. That's a 208. And the transformers in these units are set up for 230 volt from the factory, because it's probably more common. And, that 208, 230 with the slash there, the backslash, it's one or the other. And it's just enough, especially on the heating side. That inducer comes on. As soon as it goes to light, you got the low voltage on the, you got all the safeties, and then you got the gas valve, and it would just restart because I'd see 19 volts, I'd see 18 volts, and it would just, rude equipment does not like anything 19 and under. So it would start over.
Yep.
Time delay. 208, 230, whatever it takes.
Yeah. Yeah,
That was
he's reading he's reading nomenclature. He's not testing it with a meter.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, "I got about 216." And I'm like, "Well, that's not 240. That's pretty low." He's like, "Oh, it must be a 208 panel." I'm like, "Yeah, it probably is."
Yeah,
but I was glad to get that call. That's an easy one.
Yeah, you
on a brand new unit. That's about the best situation you could have.
That's for sure.
So what's the plans on the new wood shop?
Well, the new wood shop, I've got me a brand new bandsaw mill.
I seen a picture of that thing.
Yeah.
I know. I'll have to send you another one. I looked at it for a minute earlier tonight. My buddy Coley, who is the lead singer in my high school band, there's my teenage dirtbag story, everybody. Came up here. He came and went to dinner with Mom and Dad, and I hadn't seen him in, I swear, 5 or 6 years, maybe more. And he's not seen Mom and Dad in forever. So it was nice to get to catch up a little bit, but I walked him through the wood shop.
Yeah, I gotta come check it out. It was in early stages when I was up there.
Yeah, well, it's nice now. It has that central air and heat. Also, it has a wood stove
and a radiant floor.
And a radiant floor, but I haven't hooked the radiant up yet. But I will eventually. But shoot, I got enough waste wood. I can burn that. It keeps the place toasty.
I do love my wood shop I had in Atlanta was I had a little wood stove out there. Something about a wood stove and a wood shop.
Yep.
For one, you got a bunch of scrap laying around all the time.
That's it.
Yep.
You can throw in
One
there.
way to keep the floor clean.
Yep. All right, Joe. Well,
All right.
we're definitely going to have to do this again.
Yeah, we definitely have to do more of this, Dad.
Maybe we'll talk about something really fun like fishing, catching crawfish, cooking jambalaya, or maybe making some gumbo.
Now,
Yeah, I
Foodie
need
is
to
going to
have
be
some
wanting to know
gumbo.
where the rest of this episode went after he heard gumbo.
I know. I've done
So we've
more out
got
your
a buddy
seasoning.
in Canada who I need to send some of your seasoning to, but he's the HVAC Foodie on Instagram. But I think he would get a kick out of hearing you talk about cooking the Cajun food.
Well, anyway, just watch out. You got a buddy that comes over and borrows $100 and decides to get it back to the house before 4 o'clock.
That's pretty good. That's
Pretty
actually
good advice.
pretty clever, actually.
I thought it was. My wife and I were
man.
driving down home to Louisiana to visit the family, and I heard I got a Cajun radio station, and the guy was telling that joke, and my wife is saying, "What is he saying? What is he saying?" I said, "Tell you when we get to my mama's house."
Yeah.
And it
Let me
means-
borrow $100. That's what you said.
And I'm going down the road just cracking up, and she says, "What the heck's so funny? What's so funny?" I couldn't understand a word they said. I said, "I did. No problem." But anyway.
Well,
y'all
thanks for
have
coming on the
yourself a
show, Joe.
wonderful
Good to-
time, and it's good to speak with you
Yeah.
guys. And I respect y'all a lot. You take care of yourselves.
Thanks, Dad.
We will, and I'll talk to you soon, man.
All right,
Take care.
I'm getting off. Bye.
Oh, that was fun.
Oh, yeah. You cannot get them stories on any other podcast. Come on.
No, no, you can't. And I'll tell you, he told some earlier this evening at dinner, and dude, I was wanting to laugh so hard I cried at dinner. It was so funny, the stuff he was talking
He's
about.
just like my dad.
it just
it's like
pours
they-
out, man. And I mean,
just roll with it. Yeah.
he's told me so many
The
stories,
stuff they remember.
and now it's like, I mean, probably 70% of tonight I've never heard. That's half the reason I kept getting quiet, because I was like, I've never heard this stuff, and it blows my mind.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm not. I'm just going to let him roll. You got to just let him go.
No, you can't stop that. And I mean, I listened to him at 81, by the way, everybody. He's 81 now. So when he was talking about working in that chemical plant, he was doing that in the 60s and 70s with a pocket calculator. And it just blows my mind.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, every time I listen to him speak about things he's done in life, he's even smarter than I ever knew the day before. I
Well,
wish
and the
my
stuff
brain
that he-
worked like that.
you know,
It's crazy.
The systems that he designs and puts in now, like I said, a heat pump at a house, he puts that knowledge and that effort from those big plants. He puts that
Yeah.
into a little 2-ton heat pump at some lady's house. I mean,
Yeah, it's crazy. And
he
that's
puts
that's
that
what he
same-
tried to teach me to do. That's what he tried to teach me to do.
Yeah.
And like I said, there's
the
holes
slam
that I
and
didn't get to
goes.
learn, but it's crazy.
oh yeah, he's got a lot going on that you could get from that guy for sure.
Oh yeah, we definitely have to do
So I am
a few repeats of this. I know you got to go to bed.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm out of Willet, so
I am.
I didn't drink a whole bottle. I just had one glass, but I'm out of that. So
I'm like halfway through a 12-pack.
oh, that
because
clock,
I
dude! That
couldn't-
clock is killing me.
At least when he was
I love
speaking,
it.
he covered it a good bit.
I thought it went off every hour.
So
Every time it went off during the show, I'm like, "Holy shit! Is it midnight?"
Almost. So it goes off, on the hour for the amount of the hour, but it dings every 15 minutes to let you know you're hitting a quarter hour. It's old school.
Every
Old school
time
as
it
can
went
be.
off, I looked at my phone like holy crap. Because I'm used to like the church down the street, you hear it on the hour.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm sitting here watching him fix his morning coffee pot. His morning or his nightly routine is in full swing now. Dogs went out,
he's
getting the
pumped.
coffee ready. He's probably not going to sleep for 2 hours. His brain is going to go nuts like mine does every night.
Oh yeah, he's got to wind down.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope y'all enjoyed that, and there's more to come.
Oh, most definitely.
And
I know Dennis and I have kicked it around, but I'm seriously thinking about us putting some Cajun Joe's Bayou Spice on the swag shop. If you're interested, please let us know.
Yeah.
I will make that happen.
We got to put it on there. We got to put that on there.
Yes, absolutely.
Everybody I know around here has it in their pantry.
Oh, I know.
I know Foodie needs it.
Oh, Foodie needs it. Got Coley when he was over
seasoning.
here. I'll tell you one more quick story. Coley has always been obsessed with my dad's jambalaya. So they were talking about it, and he's like, Joe, you have to teach me how to cook this one day. And he's like, well, Coley, he said, you want some jambalaya? He's like, I would love some jambalaya. He's like, Rhydon, go downstairs to the freezer. And he literally, there's an ice cream bucket full of jambalaya he cooked like a week ago that he froze some of it. And he gave it to Coley, and I thought Coley was going to have like the greatest heart attack of his life right there. He's like, you were seriously giving me this? And then, so Coley's standing there holding his bucket of jambalaya. We'd already opened up an old choice, which is our band. I think you saw it, but we opened up that old bin that was down there and realized some of his like original lyrics were in there. So he was geeking out about that. So he's holding all our old band stuff in one hand. He's holding a tub of jambalaya in the other hand, and Dad opens up the cabinet. He's like, oh yeah, grab that big green topped bottle up there. And it's this massive jar of his spice. And Coley's like, you can't give me this. He's like, oh, I'm giving you this. I think Coley, I didn't even knew what to do with himself. He's like, I've not seen you guys in 6 years, and like I'm leaving here with armfuls of stuff like I was a high school kid in here again. It was funny.
Yeah, that's...
Dude,
Yeah,
my dad made such an impression on so many people. It's crazy. Like my friends to this day just love him.
Oh, he's so easy to talk to, man. Like I said, when he would call me for tech support, we'd get the problem figured out, and then we'd talk for 45 more minutes.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, can't get enough. All right, well.
I hope you enjoyed it, everybody.
Once again, thanks for all the support. Yeah. And
now you know
we'll
why
get
I'm
some
as
seasoning on
crazy as I am. At least a little bit.
You can't. Yeah.
My
Oh yeah, I got some.
My Cajun mountain upbringing. What in the hell?
I know. All right, we'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Peace.